Hey again, this is Jerry Roberts, and this is the next lecture for our discussions of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Um, the purpose of this particular session is to look at some of the current issues in Latter-day Saints. There'll probably be two separate videos covering this, but in the first one, we're going to deal with the difficult question of whether or not Latter-day Saints are Christians. The challenge that we're facing today, and this honestly is a relatively recent challenge. This is something that only began in, I would say, the 20 teens. Um, in the earlier lectures that I've done about this particular discussion, I've always noted the fact that people who were involved in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints proudly called themselves Mormons. In the 2000s, I still remember in 2007, 8, when I was in the United States on a time of itineration, they actually had a whole series of commercials that they ran. That the commercials were, I am Mormon, I am a Mormon, and I am a Mormon, and they literally were doing these videos that were glorifying, proudly proclaiming, I am a Mormon, and. But at some point after that time, they began to realize that the term Mormon tended to set them apart and make people look at them strange. I'm uncertain as to whether this is true, but there was a musical that was made called The Book of Mormon. And in this musical, there was a portrayal of Mormonism that, while being somewhat crude and certainly not completely accurate, it definitely did portray a lot of their teachings and their lives and their lifestyles very accurately. And I would never suggest anyone to watch the thing, but it created that, got the word Mormon out there into the zeitgeist to a point that the word Mormon has a negative connotation to it. So what we're seeing in the last 10 to 12 years, we've been seeing a change where the LDS is in a rebranding process. And the current deception that's taking place is that members of the LDS church are being encouraged to call themselves Christians. They use the term Christian. We're part of the Christian church, they might even say. But in reality, this is a public relations move that serves to make their group seem more appealing and less weird to an outside audience. Even though they used to prefer the term Mormon, now the term Mormon is kind of almost seen as a negative. They don't like being called Mormons. They don't like when people call them Mormons. So it's a kind of an odd thing that's happened just in the last 10 to 15 years. Now, the question we're going to have to deal with is, do they really believe that you and they are both Christians in the same way? And the answer to that question is clearly not. Um, when we look at what they're doing, and this is something that we've discussed in other aspects of this course and will continue to discuss, they are redefining the term Christian and using the term Christian to make themselves more appealing to a wider audience. Because it's clear from their history that they do not believe that they are the same as what an average person of our day thinks of as Christian. So what are the actual beliefs about the one and only true church? And I actually borrowed this from a very good podcast by Todd Friel. It's information that I knew, but he kind of encapsulated it in a way that was like so perfect that I just borrowed some of his information. But again, if you were walking around talking to a Mormon your age, more than likely a member of the Latter-day Saint Church, they're going to call themselves Christian and say, well, we're just Christians. We're just Christians. We're Christians. We're just part of the Christian church. But what is it that their religion has actually taught about the relationship between Mormonism or Latter-day Saints and what we would consider the modern Christian church? We can start with Joseph Smith. He was actually the founder of Mormonism, founder of the Latter-day Saints Church. This is actually a quote taken from one of his stories about having met the Father and the Son, the visions on which he based the early teachings of Mormonism. And while he was talking to the Father and the Son, who were two different physical entities, when he was talking to the two of them, he inquired of them, asking, "What church should I join?" Because he was very worried about the reality of his soul. He knew that he needed something, and he was wondering what church he should join. And the response, "I was answered that I must join none of them, for they were all wrong." And the personage who addressed me said that all their creeds were an abomination in his sight. So now this is one of many different times that Joseph Smith made the statement that the Christianity that we know today, the Christianity that I'm involved in, the Christianity that you're involved in, Baptists, Mennonites, Methodists, Presbyterian, anybody who is involved and call themselves what we would call themselves a classical Christian, a Christian based on their biblical understanding of what it means to be a Christian, Joseph Smith repudiated all of them and clearly stated that what he was doing was not a part of what he saw as the Christian church. And with those teachings in mind, we can see that idea that Latter-day Saints are not Christians in what we would consider the actual meaning of that word in our day. And we can see that being played out throughout their history. There was a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, which was the first group of leaders that Joseph Smith pulled together. He was part of this group from 1835 and until after Joseph Smith's death, and he stayed a part of this group for like 30 years. And Orson Pratt, following up his leader, said both Catholics and Protestants are nothing less than the whore of Babylon. So basically saying that Catholicism and Protestantism, all what we would consider modern Christianity, were the whore of Babylon that's found in the book of Revelation. So are Latter-day Saints Christians? Well, it seems that the LDS Church has continually taught that Christianity is not what they are a part of, nor is it the Christianity of today is not what they belong to. We have the words of John Taylor. He was the third president. The president is basically the high priest or the head apostle of the Latter-day Saint Church. He was the third one. He served from 1880 to 1887. In one of his discourses, he made the statement, "What does the Christian world know about God? Nothing." So again, are Latter-day Saints Christians? Well, it seems that their teachings, they have always taught that the Christianity as we know it today is not Christian, and they were not a part of it. So it's very disingenuous to use that word when they are not part of it. Another member of the Quorum of the 12 from 1911 to 1933, James Talmage, he wrote the book called The Great Apostasy. We'll have a quote from that in just a moment, but one of the statements he made is, "The sectarian churches are all wrong." Okay. We are Christians. Well, not according to everything that you've taught. Everything you've taught is Catholics, Protestants, sectarian churches, all of those churches are wrong. They're abominations. They're the whore of Babylon. So when you use the say we are Christians, you certainly can't be talking about the church as is known today. And this is a quote from The Great Apostasy. And this is actually kind of the theme, the underlying theme of the book, The Great Apostasy. Following the death of Jesus Christ, wicked people persecuted and killed many church members. Other church members drifted from the principles taught by Jesus Christ and his apostles. The apostles were killed, and priesthood authority, which once again is very important within the Latter-day Saint movement, priesthood authority was taken from the earth. So again, when a Latter-day Saint says we are Christian, they're not They don't certainly don't mean the type of Christian that you are thinking of. Moving now, you might say, well, that was in the old times. That was 1935. That was 1880. Well, let's move up into a little more recent times. Ezra Taft Benson, who was the 13th president of the LDS, 85 to 94, which seems like a long time ago for you, but I got married in 1985, so it wasn't really that long ago. Ezra Taft Benson made the statement, there is only one church in the world that has the authority to administer the ordinances of salvation. And since he was the president of the Latter-day Saints, I really think he wasn't talking about the Pentecostal Church of God. I'm pretty sure he was talking about his church. So he didn't think they were Christians, using the term the way that we would use it in modern usage. And even more recently than that, the 15th president, who was from 1995 to 2008. Now, 2008 may still seem like a long time ago to you, but that's in this century. That's getting very close to the time that we're talking about now. Gordon B. Hinckley and this was actually an opportunity. He was being interviewed by the San Francisco Chronicle, and again, they were kind of pressing him on the question of whether Latter-day Saints, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, are they Christian like Catholic? Are they Christian like Protestant? And he literally made the statement, the traditional Christ of whom they speak is not the Christ of whom I speak. So even as recently as 2008, their chief prophet, the president of the entire organization, clearly distinguished Latter-day Saint beliefs about Christ from what we would call Christian beliefs about Christ. So we need to make sure and keep this in mind, that this is a deception. So what is the underlying message? What is the subtle thing that's taking place right now? Well, Latter-day Saints is in a rebranding process. They've had a lot of losses, to tell you the truth. Once the internet became a thing, and once people who left the Latter-day Saint Church were able to began putting out videos about what they were subjected to, once they started seeing how people started seeing what goes on inside the temple, when they started hearing about the rituals and the handshakes and all the little weird stuff that goes on there, they had a lot of losses. They were really having a hard time recruiting members, and Mormonism took on the weird meaning that it really kind of is. That's the sad thing about it. Even though I have acquaintances that are Mormon that I think are lovely people, they're kind people, but the beliefs and practices that they practice are quite peculiar and quite different from biblical teachings. They're based on the teachings of Joseph Smith and the people who followed him. So what is the underlying message? What are they saying when they're saying that we are Christians? Literally in 2007, 8, 9, we are Mormons is what they said. Why are they saying we are Christians? What they're saying now is Mormons are true Christians. Again, we just got through reading that quote a minute ago from The Great Apostasy. And here's the idea behind it. Mormons are true Christians. They are practicing the original version of Christianity, the version of Christianity that was taught by Jesus and the apostles, the real Christianity that was restored by the visions and work of Joseph Smith. So they're the true Christians. So when they say we are Christians, they're not saying we are Christians like you. They are literally saying we are Christians, and what they're not saying is, and you're not. They kind of have this mindset that people in non-LDS churches today are creedal Christians, meaning those who follow the creeds, following teachings that were created by the Catholic Church in the early councils. And they believe that during those creedal councils of the Council of Trent, the Council of Nicene, we have the Nicene Creed, which is something that we quote, that there were doctrines created there that were literally created to hide and distort the true gospel. And they believe that the true gospel is that idea of the law of eternal progression, and that has been suppressed by these false creeds that we believe are Christianity. They say that they are the true Christians who practice New Testament Christianity, not the creedal churches that today have been influenced by third century heresies, such as the belief in the Trinity and the belief that we don't have to practice all of their practices in order to earn our salvation. So this is a very important topic. The reason I've chosen to make a whole video just about this rebranding process is very sneaky. Now, understand your Mormon friend isn't trying to be sneaky. Okay, I'm not saying that they have malice. I'm not saying they're trying to fool anyone specifically. This is what they're being taught to say. They may not even understand themselves that when they say we are Christians, that the underlying message is that we're Christians and you're not. They may not even understand that. But in reality, that is the underlying message of we are Christians. They're literally are saying we are practicing true New Testament Christianity. No one else on the earth is. And that's kind of the underlying message. So be aware of the fact that this is a practice that's going on now. And it's a practice that we're going to have to deal with and be aware of going forward. Now, there are some excellent resources if you begin to get involved in ministry to LDS people, excellent resources about how to discuss with a Mormon about their faith and discuss with a Mormon how their faith is different from Christianity. I've got an excellent resource that I've looked into, and it was provided to me by a also I watch a lot of these webinars, a lot of these podcasts that are just excellent things. There's one called Cultish. Cultish is an excellent podcast. They do a lot on Mormonism. And one of the people on there talked about the fact that oftentimes in order to convert a person to Christianity, you have to first convert them to Mormonism, meaning they may not even understand all the things they believe. And when they say they are Christians, oftentimes they honestly believe that they believe the same things you may be going to in a Pentecostal church or an Assemblies of God or a Baptist church. They think they believe the same things you believe. And when they're confronted with the fact that, no, we don't believe any of the stuff like that, they're like, what? I thought all Christians believe these things. So do understand that. I'm not trying to create a harsh, confrontational mindset here. But we do need to be aware of that. We do need to be aware of the idea of the rebranding that's taking place and the efforts they are trying to take to reach a wider audience, that these are not honest. They're not honest sayings. And so be aware of that rebranding that's taking place in Mormonism.